tea. Catch up. Apples? You need help. Make it at home.
Okay.
What else we got?
This is instant.
Got the apples. Oh, we haven't put in tea.
Any more suggestions?
Oh my God! Somebody said don't drink it. Drink less. I guess that's an option.
Okay. And we'll say the mug is half full.
Okay, I heard buy it from sustainable practices. Now, that won't actually reduce our demand for coffee, but it's a very good segue into the maximize direction. So, once we've reduced our demand for coffee, we want to do it in a way that's as efficient as possible. So, buying it from, I'm sorry, what did you just say? I drew a blank. Sustainable. So, or is that over here? That's kind of over here. All right. What's the end? Neutralize. Dan, I'll let you field that.
Good question. We'll try and get to that in a little bit. Okay, we'll put like what was it? Sustainably raised coffee, essentially. Was that the suggestion?
Sustainably. No child slaves.
Fair trade.
Okay, but now we've already jumped ahead. We're
Okay.
neutralizing. We're trying to get coffee that has minimal or neutral effect.
All right, let's stick in the second category for a second. How can we get the coffee that we do decide that we need, even after we've reduced our demand?
Right, we're down to twice a week in our reusable mug at home, standing.
Bike or a walk to get your coffee. Okay. I'm sorry, there was another one.
That's a bike.
Solar mug.
Your bicycle creates the kinetic coffee percolation aspect. Only slam espresso.
Okay. That's tiny.
Any more efficient meeting of our coffee demand? Can you draw some watery coffee up there?
Buy instant coffee, and then they can make take the grounds and make Java logs.
Okay.
Use the coffee grounds. Compost the grounds.
Compost.
Okay.
This is what my compost pail looks like, so that means compost. Chicken.
Feed them to chickens. Yeah, we need chickens up there. Anything else?
I assume that's what your chickens look like.
Okay. Let's move on to the next step. So now we're meeting our demand efficiently. How can we source either the coffee or the things that we're using related to the coffee, including the energy used to heat it, roast it, transport it? How can we meet those renewably?
Solarized Starbucks.
Okay.
Full Starbucks.
So
At the same time.
we can use some solar energy to brew our coffee and operate our coffee shops.
It's a Starbucks logo.
Okay.
Okay.
Anything else? Neutralize it. We can get sustainably harvested coffee.
What was that? A ship?
Yep.
Have it rain coffee from the sky instead of having it brewed at home. It can just be a rain cloud.
So more scientific research into coffee supply chains. Okay.
Cloud seeding.
Public policy.
Okay.
This will be the government. Okay.
Okay, and this,
So-
but this was related to the cup and packaging.
I want to pause here for a second because unlike the heat example and the irrigation example, I see, that was kind of straightforward. The heat had to do with energy. The water had to do with water. But I see stuff up here that has to do with materials and waste and then energy. And there's issues of
Water.
of water, of biodiversity, of social equity. There's what are we measuring?
What are we measuring?
And what matters?
So from here, you obviously recognize this is a thick pot of a lot of considerations. How do we make a decision about what's most important? What is the most effective course of action? And what's most important to us? So let's take a step back from that for a second about the decision-making process.
Yeah. So it's worthwhile while we're trying to figure out, what matters. Is it the environment that matters? Is it how much I'm paying for my coffee? Is it the people who are making, roasting, raising the coffee beans? This is kind of a traditional way that people like to present sustainability as a three-legged stool of economy, equity, or society, and the environment, with the idea that you can't have balance in any of these areas unless you have balance in all of these areas. It takes three-legged stool. You get it. You can visualize it. And go ahead.
But another way of looking at these same three elements is that it's a nested model. And this is generally what we're moving to because the things are nested within each other. To have a stable economy, or I'm sorry, to have a stable economy, it has to be nested in a stable social system. And to have a stable social system, it has to be nested in a stable or sustainable environment.
In other words, you can have a sustainable environment without society or economy. It just means that we are gone and dead. So we'd prefer to have all three, if possible.
Right. So why do we care? What are we trying to measure? So let's take a step back and look at what are we trying to avoid in the first place. We call these the endpoint indicators. The things we're basically trying to avoid, right? Disease, death, and extinction. The things that none of us really wants for ourselves or our kids, and hopefully for most species, maybe mosquitoes are an exception.
And so this is all very measurable. You can measure disease and death and extinction. The problem is we want to know what to do before these things become measurable. So we need something to measure before disease, death, and extinction happen. And we call these the midpoint indicators.
This will make more sense in a little bit.
These are things in our environment that we can measure that can give us a hint about whether death, disease, and extinction are on their way.
Going to happen. So we can measure global warming, water pollution, air pollution, ozone depletion, raw resource use, and biodiversity. These are what we call the midpoint indicators. These are the things that result from certain, usually human activities that will eventually give a good indication of what could happen down the line.
And these are things that we work with at our center, trying to quantify these things in the environment. But they're still a step removed from your house and your building, and we need to know how the choices we make there affect these things in the environment. These are site and building metrics, and these are some of them. So these are the things you can measure. You can measure your operating energy, that's your energy bill. You can measure how much solid waste is leaving your building. You can measure the amount of night sky pollution that you're emitting in the evening.
And any of these things will have multiple effects down the line. So the burning of fossil fuels, say, in your operating energy will have effects on your air pollution, on your water pollution, on carbon, so it'll have an effect on global warming impact. The point is that it's nonlinear. They're complex interactions.
So the bad news is we can't tell you that if you cut your energy use by half, you will have X amount of effect on water pollution and ozone depletion, and you will make X number of species go extinct. It's more complicated than that. The good news is you don't actually have to know all the detailed mechanics of how the system works. You just need to remember to reduce your demand, meet it efficiently, and do it renewably. And the amount that you can do that you can reduce your impact, you know that you're having positive effects down the line. So now, want to erase?
Yeah.
We're going to try to get down to some real practical stuff for people who might build a house someday or buy a house or rent an apartment. And this is the stuff that we know most about because we are building professionals. And we're going to talk related to the built environment about your utilities, your site, and your program, which we'll get to later if you don't know what that means. So your utilities means the gas, electricity, and water that are coming to your home. And our rule of thumb is I forgot to explain. For each of these things that are coming up in utilities, we're going to give you two solutions. The first is sort of the general rule of thumb, applies to everyone generally. And then second is sort of the take it to the next level for advanced users who care more about the environment. But for utilities, the rule of thumb is to attack the biggest slice. So I assume everyone here has already replaced all of your light bulbs, which is awesome.
Thank you.
They save like 75% of the energy of incandescence, but your lighting is probably only 10 or 11% of all the energy you use, so you've really only saved 7 or 8% of your total energy. So don't stop changing your light bulbs, but think about what's using the most energy and try to make the big cuts there. For gas,
because we live in a heating climate, the two big things are insulation, maximizing your insulation, that's the jacket around the house, and infiltration, which is a fancy word for drafts. You want to maximize your insulation and minimize your infiltration.
you can use these handy plastic window kits to cover your windows and stop drafts.
Surprisingly effective and surprising return on investment. They're, $13 for a pack.
And for advanced users or people in the market for a new furnace, we'd recommend getting an energy audit, which costs a couple $100, and someone comes to your house and uses a fancy camera and takes pictures like this, and looks around and finds out where your house is losing energy, where you need insulation, where you have drafts, and we'll give you a list of recommendations for cost-effective improvements.
So you can start with these. If you know you have areas where you don't have enough insulation, or if you know that there's cold air coming in through the window, you know where to attack that stuff. But the home energy audit will maybe show you the places that you don't know or are trapped in the walls.
Or the roof.
Or roof.
And this is a